architects, engineers, physicists, scientists, chemical engineers, structural engineers, and then airline pilots, fighter pilots, the former head of Star Wars program, all coming out saying 9/11's an inside job. The planes stood down. The buildings were blown up. The former German defense minister, Andres von Müller, we first interviewed him about 7 years ago, before his book was even out, called The CIA and 9/11, where he details how they did it. In fact, I want to get Andres von Müller back on. And, you know, they're just counting on the American people not being able to face the horror of this. But if they take 4,300-plus foster kids, declassified public, and radiate them to death, kids they'd stolen from parents, killing them, that's our own government. They wouldn't kill 3,000 people on 9/11 to get a police state, attack all these nations, take our rights. So this is what we're dealing with. Niels Harrit is just an amazing individual. He's one of many other scientists, and these are published peer-reviewed reports, who are going out, you know, with the samples that have the custody chain control, and testing it, and it's explosive thermite residue in the towers. Now, we've also had the underwriting laboratories engineer on, Kevin Ryan, who saw their internal reports how the towers had to be blown up, spoke out about it, and got fired. We have him coming out and pointing out that the key people at NIST that are doing the whitewash just so happen to be, of only a few dozen people, the world experts for NASA and others in exploding thermate. And it turns out unconventional insulation was put on in '99 in Tower 1, 2, and 7, where the CIA was based in 7. So very interesting to have that going on with just a basic investigation. So Niels Harrit has been an associate professor of the Department of Chemistry, University of Copenhagen for 37 years, wrote a scientific peer paper with 8 other authors titled Active Thermitic Material Discovered in Dust from the 9/11 World Trade Center Catastrophe, published in the Open Chemical Physics Journal. The paper by Harrit concludes that the chips consisting of reacted and partially reacted or detonated super thermite are present in the samples of the dust of Hoffman's essays were written to help explain the findings of the paper to the layperson and to examine a hypothetical scenario involving the Harrit paper's findings. And there's links to all that at globalresearch.ca. We have those up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. So Professor Niels Harrit, joining us from University of Copenhagen. Thank you so much for coming on, sir.
I'm here. Thank you for being on your show.
Yes, sir. It's good to have you. Okay, you got the floor. Tell us about the research, the papers, explosive thermate, what we're dealing with, why you got into this research, what the findings were.
Well, we're dealing with the dust, which was produced when the World Trade Center collapsed. These were thousands of tons that everybody has seen when the towers and Building 7 came down. Now, this dust, when you see the material, it's kind of dull, gray, olive green powder. And if you imagine this in a plastic bag, what we have done and other people have done was to take a very strong magnet and you pull it along the plastic bag. And along with the magnet, some stuff comes up the plastic bag when you pull the magnet up the bag. And this is magnetic. What you extract by the magnet is magnetic. Now, if you take a look on whatever comes up with the magnet, there are 2 very important components of whatever you extract by this. One is some tiny spheres of what would you call them in English? Tiny balls, tiny spheres. Is that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But you know, today I'm not too good at English because I was getting your name wrong. I know it's Niels Harrit. So please continue, Professor. Yes, there are these teeny little balls that are given off during the thermate reaction, as Professor Jones found, but you separately did your own study on this and had similar findings. So, yes, that's correct in English. Go ahead, Professor.
That's the one thing. And these tiny spheres are mainly composed of iron. And they are in themselves a proof that some thermite has been used, because these are the remains of the thermite after the reaction. This is reacted thermite. Now, the new thing is that along with these metal iron spheres are some tiny, we call them chips. We call them red-gray chips because they're red on one side and gray on the other side. And the largest of these chips you can just see with a naked eye. They're about 1 millimeter. And but the majority of them are so small that you have to get them under a microscope in order to see them. That is, they're less than a millimeter, say 1/10 of a millimeter. And they have a red side and they have a gray side. Now, the red side is the interesting side in this connection, because in that we have found the ingredients of thermite. And the most important ingredients is iron oxide, which one variety of iron oxide is rust. And this is known by most people. And the other component is aluminum. Now, it's very important that these two ingredients are there as tiny, tiny particles.
And those are the exact accelerant, correct, Professor, that makes normal thermite become explosive thermate, correct?
No, not quite.
Okay, go ahead.
Because if we leave the thermite for a minute, the thermate for a minute, you're mixing up thermite and thermate. So until further, please let me call it thermite, which is the material which has a lot of energy. Now, this energy can come out either as heat or in a chemical reaction where you get a pressure, where gases is involved. This is what happens in an explosive, dynamite or TNT, whatever. In an explosive, you have a reaction which gives off gases, which has pressure, which is a kind of a punch, or you knock things into pieces.
A push.
A push. Okay, it's a very hard push. This is how an explosive works. And the chemical reaction produces a gas at high pressure. But the energy in the thermite can also be released as heat. And this is a tremendous amount of heat. If this is the way it works. The point with the nanothermite is that the other stuff you put in can make it work either way. That is, you can get the energy out as heat, or you can get the energy out as pressure, as an explosive.
Ah.
And regarding the red chips, we do not know, actually, which function it has. This has to be cleared up in future investigation.